This is Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast where we bring Jesus into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. I'm Jason, and we're really glad that you tuned into Sports Spectrum today. I want to tell you a couple places that you can check us out and reach me directly. You can go to our website, sportspectrum.com. That's a great place to go for all of our content here at Sports Spectrum. Simply type in sportspectrum.com and you'll get a daily devotional. You'll get all of our podcasts. You'll get different stories updated every single day during the week, Monday through Friday, on the intersection of sports and faith, all available right there at sportspectrum.com. You can give us a follow on social media. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We are on Facebook. Just search Sports Spectrum and click that like or follow button or whatever it is, and you can connect with us there. And then you can email me if you'd like to email me directly. My email address is jason@sportspectrum.com. You can reach me directly. Maybe you have a guest idea, just want to say hello and drop a line. Maybe you have a future topic or storyline that we should be considering. Maybe you have an idea for a future story. You can email me, jason@sportspectrum.com. We want to give thanks to our sponsors and partners today. Ronald Blue Trust, applying biblical wisdom and technical expertise to help their clients make wise financial decisions, to experience clarity and confidence, and to leave a lasting legacy. We all have a lot of questions regarding our finances. Ronald Blue Trust has those answers, and you can reach them directly through their website, ronblue.com. That's Ronald Blue Trust, ronblue.com. Today on Sports Spectrum, we are pleased to welcome Joel Penton, the former Ohio State football player, a member of 3 Big Ten championship teams, played 5 seasons with Ohio State, and won a national championship in 2002, part of the team that won it all for the Buckeyes back in 2002. Now, he is a speaker and an author. He has a great ministry called Stand for Truth. He's part of a great academy. Wait till he tells you what he's doing with Lifewise Academy. I think this will maybe blow your mind. It really will, because it blew mine that this was something that you could do in 2020 in schools to reach people for the gospel with his Lifewise Academy. Joel was a 4-time academic all Big Ten selection, not a surprise, and he won the prestigious Wuerffel Trophy, also known as the Humanitarian Heisman. The trophy is a national award recognizing the one college football player in the entire country who best combines exemplary community service with athletic and academic achievement. Now, after he graduated from OSU, from Ohio State, from the Ohio State University, Joel actually turned down an opportunity to play in the NFL to begin a career in full-time speaking. This is Joel Penton's story. He's got a great one. The former Ohio State football player joins us here right now on Sports Spectrum. Take a listen. Joel, welcome to Sports Spectrum, my friend. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
It's good to talk to you. Good to see you as we record this on Zoom, which I have to imagine has been your, in a lot of ways, what you've been doing in 2020, because you are a professional speaker, an inspirational speaker, somebody that goes around and shares to large audiences, and the audience world has been shut down, or at least it was, for a large part of 2020. What was this year like for you, or what's it been like for you, I guess, pivoting from probably traveling and speaking all around to not being able to do that as much?
Yeah, I would say it's been very weird. For the past 13 years, I've been a full-time speaker. And so especially, shutting things down in the spring was weird, but it's also, kind of like when there's an emergency, like a blizzard or something like that. It wasn't that weird, but I tell you what, the summer gearing up for the school year, which for, over a decade has been, hit the road, spend time out there in schools, bunches of, dozens of schools, thousands of students. For that not all of a sudden not to be the case this fall has been very strange, and like you said, been doing a lot of this, even with the speaking, our ministry, and now we have a team of speakers. We're doing the virtual thing and figuring it out. It's been in some ways kind of fun because it's, hey, we have a new challenge. The needs are still there. Students still need the message. In fact, you might say there's a greater need now than ever. And so it's an exciting challenge to say, how are we going to get the message to them? How are we going to use technology? How are we going to get creative, get innovative? And so it's been kind of fun.
So what are some of the ways that you had to do that? Because like you said, you are a full-time speaker, which means this is your job, and suddenly your job has changed, or at least temporarily changed, we'll say, because I'm hoping that we're getting back to what we were before, at least on some level. So what were some of the pivots and some of the different adjustments that you had to make?
Yeah, so it has been going virtual as for school assemblies, because many schools are meeting virtually. They're doing their classes virtually, and they're certainly not gathering everyone together into a gymnasium. But like I said, they still have the same needs. They need character education. They need these positive messages. And so it's been us saying, hey, here's a great opportunity. As an organization, we're fairly young. We're fairly adept with technology. So let's see if we can be kind of first to the party to figure out this virtual school assembly thing. And there was a learning curve, not just a learning curve, but schools for the first several weeks of the school year, they were so swamped just trying to figure out what they were doing. It was hard for them to think about things like virtual school assemblies. But with each passing week, we're getting more and more traction. We've already booked over 100 virtual school assemblies for schools across the nation. So we're optimistic. And yes, it's not our intention to remain virtual indefinitely. We are looking forward to the day when we can get back there in the live crowds and whatnot. But for the time being, we're happy to use whatever we can to bridge the gap.
Well, and a lot of people I've talked to have said, listen, this opened up an idea that maybe we weren't thinking about pre-pandemic that expands our audience to reach even more people. Have you seen that?
We have. It's interesting. I see both sides of the coin. The pandemic has shown the possibilities we didn't realize were there, the ability to connect and take advantage of some technology that we probably weren't taking advantage of as much as we could. But I think it's also proven to illustrate that the personal in the same room type of interaction is just irreplaceable. Yeah. You can't replace it. I think everybody, the Zoom fatigue that you and I are, going to be suffering from a little bit at the end of this conversation.
That's right.
It just goes to show that there is a limit, and it's not as though what we're doing right now is going to replace the in-person, in the flesh interaction. So it's been interesting.
That's cool. Joel Penton's our guest here on Sports Spectrum. I want to ask you about speaking, professional speaking. You and I were talking a little bit before we hit record, because again, we're going to talk about your Ohio State journey, and I'm sure that's the platform in a lot of ways to get an audience to listen to you in a lot of ways, right? You have to have a platform or something that people would listen, not just the good message, which is the key, most important thing, but why would anybody listen to Jason Romano? Why would anybody listen to Joel Penton? Well, you're also a former Ohio State football player, but you were telling me, even though you went and played football at Ohio State and had a lot of success, you were on a championship team, that you wanted to speak, or at least thought about speaking, all the way back to high school. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And it wasn't so much about wanting to be in front of a group or, some romanticized version of public speaking, but it's because my life was radically transformed by my relationship with God, by Jesus completely invading my life and changing me. And I just wanted other people to experience the same thing. I wanted to share my faith with others. And so I started doing that, sharing with my classmates and teammates and anyone who would listen. But just being that kind of outspoken leadership type of person, even as a high schooler, as a freshman, sophomore in high school, people like youth pastors, my pastor, took note of that and started putting me on stage in front of groups and, hey, share your testimony with the youth group. Hey, fill in to preach for me. And so, and for me, I just always thought, well, sure. And why share the gospel with one person if you could share with a room of 100 people? It was just math at that point for me. And so I took every opportunity I could get, not because I think I'm some sort of gifted speaker or something, but because there's this message that is that important that people need to hear about it. And so, yes, at the age of 17, I preached my first sermon to a church of probably 500 people. Word kind of spread that there was this young guy who was a football player who was preaching, and I can't imagine I was doing a good job, but I wasn't doing a terrible job.
Sure.
And so I found myself kind of on the preaching circuit in my small hometown, even as a high schooler. But even before I graduated from high school, I was starting to travel the state and fill in to preach at different churches. And most comically, I spoke at a baccalaureate service, kind of the spiritual graduation service for high school graduates of a different high school before I graduated from high school. So I thought, they're bringing this high school student to speak to these high school. Anyway,
I love it.
So then I did a lot of that through college and eventually got into it full time.
So you said you were radically transformed. You heard the message and it changed you and you wanted to tell others. We're talking about the gospel, of course. Can you tell us a little bit about what took place? Maybe give us a little background of faith for you and then hearing that message and why it resonated so perfectly with you.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a great family, being taken to church, attending church every week growing up. But I wasn't a Christian. I don't know whether I heard the gospel. I remember hearing a lot about God, a lot about morals, but the clear gospel message that Jesus died for my sins and rose from the dead. It wasn't until I was in high school that I have a memory of hearing that clearly. And when I did, and I heard and understood what Jesus had done, the same change took place in me that you read about in the pages of scripture written 2,000 years ago, that I became a new creation. I was born again, the heart of stone taken out, heart of flesh put in. And I wouldn't at the time have had those words to put on it, but something very radical changed. And I knew that I was new, and I knew it was linked to hearing this timeless gospel message of what Jesus had done, dying for my sins and rising from the dead. I was a freshman in high school, and that became obviously central to my life. My life became all about that. I mean, that's the thing for which we were all created. It was to know God and worship God, and now to proclaim him to others, to make him known. And so that's what my life became about.
When you got to Ohio State, what was that adjustment like for you from high school to college, not just as a person, as a man, because there's a huge adjustment when you go to college, but you're also a football player. You're going there to play football. You're also on fire for the Lord, and you're speaking and you're still talking. You said you were speaking throughout your time in college too, which was interesting. What was that adjustment like coming to the Buckeyes?
Well, I was all of a sudden the slowest guy on the field and the least athletic guy on the field. That was quite an adjustment from high school, but
wake up call.
Beyond that, I tell people I came in as a defensive end because in high school I was very athletic, very fast by comparison to other people. But then at Ohio State, when you're playing against, in practice, the best guys in the country, realized, okay, I'm not going to stay at defensive end very long. I need to keep eating and move my way closer to the football and play defensive tackle, and where I can just take on double teams. And so Anyway, on the field, that was an adjustment. But I mean, the biggest thing in terms of school and ministry and football as well was the time management. I mean, that's a huge, huge difference from high school to college, is the amount of time spent not so much on the field for practice, but in the film room, weight room. It's very time intensive. Then schooling, there's homework you got to get done. You got to be in class, and then to pile ministry on top of that. So that kind of balancing act, how are you going to slide it all in and still eat and sleep? There's just not a lot of time for other things. So that was an adjustment.
Describe what it's like walking out on a Saturday in the Horseshoe as a Buckeye football player. I got to go to a game, first time ever in 2016. I went to Columbus and saw Ohio State annihilate Nebraska on a Saturday night in national TV and prime time. But just being in the shoe, sold out, all the tradition, all the fans. I can only imagine what it's like to actually put on the uniform and walk out and seeing 60, 70, 80, whatever it is, 100,000 people, cheering you on every single Saturday. What's that like?
Well, kind of two angles. Number one, it's surreal. It's, at least at first, it's, is this really happening? Should I, am I pinching myself? It's too much to take in. It's hard to, I'm from Van Wert, Ohio, small town, Northwest Ohio. And to walk in and to think, 10 of my towns could fit into, if every single person that lives in my hometown came, they would fill up 10% of this. And this place is packed. And how many people are watching at home? And you start to, then you stack it up. If you grew up in Ohio, you spent a lot of time over the years watching these games, and to now be in the game is hard to wrap your mind around. So there's that aspect. But the other aspect is, it's kind of amazing that it's like anything else in life, that you get used to it. And it honestly loses that. It loses that luster. So certainly, even by the end, it was a special time. It wasn't like boring or something to play against Michigan my senior year. But it's like, I tell people, it's when you're a kid and you think that all your problems will be solved if you can get that one toy you've had your eye on for Christmas, and you get it, and then a week later, it's not that special. That doesn't change from experience to experience. It's the exact same thing, even something like playing in the Horseshoe. So, it goes to show that we're made for something more, right?
Today's show is sponsored and presented by Ronald Blue Trust. Their advisor is applying biblical wisdom and technical expertise to help their clients make wise financial decisions, to experience clarity and confidence, and leave a lasting legacy. They got over 35 years of experience, not only serving the community at large, but serving professional athletes and coaches as well. They've tailored and created specific services to meet those athletes' needs, but they're also here for you and I. Trusted financial advisors providing confidence and reassurance to help you along in your financial journey, and you can trust them. That's why I love the name that they have, Ronald Blue Trust. We love what they stand for, based on biblical principles, helping individuals and families across the U.S., especially those who are beyond the debt problem stage, but want to be good stewards of their wealth. You need to go check them out at their website, ronblue.com. Any questions, any concerns, anything you want to talk about, they are available right now to answer your questions. Check out Ronald Blue Trust on their website, ronblue.com. Joel Penton is our guest here on Sports Spectrum. He's also an author, not just an inspirational speaker. His book is called Stand Your Ground, One Simple Thing That Can Set You Apart from the Rest. And he's got this cool initiative with Lifewise Academy that I'm going to ask about in just a little bit. I want to ask you about transitioning from college and turning down the opportunity, from what I read, to pursue a professional football career and instead pursue a career full-time in speaking. When did you know that football wasn't going to be the direction that you were going to pursue as far as a professional career?
Yeah, well, I thought about it. And to be quite honest with you, if I had any indication that I would have been drafted in, the first 3 rounds or something, I probably would have gone that route. I did talk to some scouts. I did play in an all-star game. I certainly would have signed with some sort of team. I would have pursued to work my way onto a team. And a lot of guys go that route and have a lot of success. However, I'd seen so many that went that route and spent, and you almost want to say it, waste a few years bouncing from city to city, practice squad here, maybe get some time here, especially in a place like Ohio State. So many guys go to the NFL. And again, some have great careers, but I just didn't get the impression. That wasn't really what I wanted to do. I had an opportunity to get right into ministry. I had developed a reputation as a guy that would speak and do a good job. I had dozens and dozens of outstanding requests to go and speak. And I thought, I'm just going to get into I've played enough football. I'm just going to get into ministry. Again, it wasn't like some sort of major sacrifice. Like I was giving up a first round draft, selection, millions and millions of dollars, but I'd just done enough on the football field, and the money wasn't like some sort of major motivation to me. So I wanted to, just jump into ministry.
So why the passion to impact teens, which I love, and high schoolers, I guess we'll say, or even maybe your curriculum is based on younger students as well. But from what I've seen in the research that I've done, it's particularly high schoolers and teenagers that you're talking to and speaking to and impacting. Why that age? Why that group?
Yeah, good question. So our ministry, Stand for Truth, which kind of got its start 13 years ago. It's now a growing ministry. We have over 40 staff members, kind of two ends of the ministry. One is the event side of things, which is where I got my start, traveling and speaking. We now have 7 different teams of people that travel and speak all over. Then we have an academy side, which we'll talk about, Lifewise. The event side of things really does focus on high schoolers and middle schoolers. The academy side of things does focus on elementary schoolers, elementary school age students. But the entire ministry has one purpose. And the purpose is to reach unchurched students in public schools with the gospel. And so why I had that passion, I think in part because at one time while I was churched, I was a student in a public school, and I didn't know the gospel. And so it's a very impressionable age. You're making a lot of decisions that will kind of set the course for life in some ways. And I was a freshman in high school when I came to faith. And so I felt like I could remember with pretty decent clarity what I was thinking, what I was feeling, what I was going through at the time. And so it was just a natural fit to me that I would speak to kind of students a few years on either end of that kind of age. If I came to Christ as a freshman, then I'd speak to middle schoolers all the way through high schoolers. And quite frankly, it was very practical in that high schools and middle schools have speakers in all the time to speak to their students, And so I remember sitting in these school assemblies. I remember suffering through many of them. And I was already getting requests to go speak. And I thought, boy, what a great audience, meaning, there's just a big old group of unchurched, non-Christian people that are actively inviting me to come and speak as it is. So let me just focus here. Let me hone the craft. Let me develop a school assembly that's going to deliver the value that schools want. And that's what we do. We do a daytime school assembly that's all about character. It's all about decision making. We don't break any rules. We don't cross any lines. We don't.
I was just going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Right.
How do you navigate that world, right?
Yeah. So we our daytime thing is exactly what schools are asking for. I mean, they're having these character-based school assemblies, but then we package it with an evening show that we just, once we book the assembly, we just ask the school very transparently, hey, we'd like to do our own event in the evening, same day. You don't need to promote it. You don't need to sponsor it, but could we use the gymnasium? Could we use the auditorium? They usually say yes. If they say no, then we try to find a community center, maybe a church, and we'll do an event in town and say, hey, guys, we would love for you to come and hear more. And then it's very simple and straightforward. I mean, it's not rocket science. At the evening show, we have some music, and then I or whoever's speaking will say, hey, guys, it was great to share with you earlier today. There's a piece of my story that I wasn't really allowed to share. I wasn't supposed to share it, but here tonight, it's optional. I'm excited to share what's actually the most important part of my story with you. And then we share the gospel.
My friends, the band Attaboy, I don't know if you know them, are
they're part of our ministry.
They're part of your ministry. There you go. I didn't even know that because they've come to our church here and we've gotten to know them and hang out with them quite a bit, actually. They've probably been here in Connecticut, I would say at least 4 times. And they do the same thing that you just described. So that makes complete sense that they're a part of your ministry because they're a band and they'll go and play a show for the kids during the day that is, geared towards an encouraging message and some good music and something that they can dance and have fun to, but then say, hey, tonight we're going to be doing this extra show or this additional show, and bam, that's where they hit them with the gospel. So I think it's great. I think it's really cool.
Yeah. Well, Attaboy, they're awesome. So I founded the ministry back in 2007 with a friend of mine, but we were very careful. We always said that let's only bring on acts, speakers, musicians that are better than us. Sure. You know, because who wants to bring on someone that's worse? Who wants to go down in quality? And so Attaboy, if you know them, they're way better than me. If you have an option to go hear Attaboy or hear me, you should, you know, I probably want to cancel my thing so I can go hear Attaboy.
Yeah, they do a good job, man. They are excellent. They actually at one point spoke and did worship at our church one Sunday morning for a couple of the services. And they really are what I like to call, I don't know if you call them flexible, but in the way that they can relate to so many different audiences, whether it's a church audience or a school audience or a bunch of teenagers or whatever. And they do a great job. And as do you, Joel Penton, because not only are you speaking and you created this amazing opportunity to get into schools and to preach the gospel, you wrote a book. It's called Stand Your Ground. You also are part of Lifewise Academy, which you mentioned earlier. So I'm just going to kind of open the floor to you to talk about your book, Stand Your Ground, why you wrote that, and then get into the purpose for Lifewise Academy as well.
Sure. Well, I actually wrote 2 books. I only say that not to try to one up you or something.
No, it's
but only
okay.
because if someone's listening and they want to read one of my books, I would rather them read the other book that wasn't mentioned.
So tell us about both the books.
Yeah. So Stand Your Ground is one, and the other is 7 Lies Almost Every Teen Believes. And in the same way that I have a daytime school assembly, which is character-based, and an evening outreach where we share the gospel, my 2 books kind of follow that pattern. Stand Your Ground is all about character. It's about decision-making. It's about commitment. A lot of my story is in it, but it's primarily, the truth is the speech came first. So my school assembly message that I share with schools is Stand Your Ground. Right. It's that story. And people for years said, you know, you should not just say all this stuff, you should really write this down. And so that's what Stand Your Ground is. And then in the evening, like we've said, we share the gospel. And so for years, I wanted a book sharing the gospel is great. And we do that. But I didn't like students leaving empty handed. And so I wrote a book specifically to put into the hands of students that come to our outreach. It's again, 7 Lies Almost Every Teen Believes. The premise is that we hear messages every day, whether it's from billboards or TV or friends or family or teachers or whatever. We're hearing these messages. And the truth is, in the world in which we live, much of what we hear, particularly when it comes to the bigger questions of life, things like purpose, things like morality, things like, the things of God, most of what we hear is their lies. And so it's kind of walking students through what are the lies we hear day in and day out about the bigger questions of life, and then what's the truth that those lies are hiding? And it's pointing to scripture, it's pointing to the gospel all the way through. So those are my books.
I love it.
And then did you want me to share about Lifewise?
Absolutely. Lifewise Academy. You're wearing the jacket. So I definitely want to hear more about that. And we'll tell people about the website and where they can go to learn more in a bit. But tell us about Lifewise Academy and what's going on with that.
Yeah, I'm very excited about Lifewise Academy. Very, very excited. I'm going to tell you what Lifewise is, and you probably won't believe me when I tell you.
Okay.
But through Lifewise Academy, we can legally teach the Bible to students in public schools during the school day. So I'll say that again. During the school day, not before school, not after school, during the school day, we can legally teach students the Bible. And that is because in 1952, the Supreme Court ruled that a practice of something called, which you may or may not have ever heard of, released time religious instruction, that's the legal term. Okay. Supreme Court ruled that it's constitutional, that students can be released from public school during the day to receive religious instruction. Doesn't have to be Bible education, but religious instruction, provided 3 criteria are met. It's off school property, they have parental permission, and it's privately funded. However, almost no one knows that this is possible. It's not widely practiced. It's, again, the Supreme Court ruled. It's been upheld by the Supreme Court ever since. More than half of the states in the nation have laws on the books about release time. For example, I live in Ohio. There's an Ohio law that says high school students can actually get school credit for released time classes, but nobody knows about it. I didn't know about it until 2 years ago when people in my hometown of Van Wert, Ohio, learned this was a possibility. They started a program, actually bought a house next to the elementary school, renovated it to classrooms, started holding classes, signed kids up. The vast majority of kids in my hometown are not plugged into a local church. They don't hear the gospel regularly. But get this, year one, 60% of the students enrolled in the class. By year three, 95% of the public elementary school students, grades 1 through 5, enrolled in the class are being taught the Bible once a week for an hour, every single week. When I got plugged in, I started asking the question. They were already asking, why isn't this in every single community across the nation? We concluded it's because people don't know that it's possible. And number two, they don't know because they don't have the tools. Nobody's developed a plug and play, replicable, turnkey program like an FCA, Youth for Christ, Young Life, that type of thing, a program that people could just plant in their hometown without having to reinvent the wheel. 2 years ago, we set out doing that. That's what Lifewise Academy is. We've linked arms with the group in Van Wert. It's now a division of our ministry, Stand for Truth. We're currently in 8 schools across 5 school districts. Every single program is over a 50% participation rate. Actually, one is that's launching this year. So we're launching in 3 new schools this fall in spite of COVID.
Awesome.
We're just so excited about the growth and the excitement. We have more than 24 schools across the nation in the kind of the launch process. If there's somebody listening that is excited by the words legally teach the Bible to public school students during school hours, we'd love to talk to them, because it's our vision to see a program like this in literally every single school district nationwide.
I can't wait to have you back on, let's say in 2 years, and see how it's grown, and God's going to do amazing things with it. I love it. And honestly, no idea that that's even possible. So I'd never heard of that, Joel. But interesting that you chose 1st through 5th graders. Now, I guess twofold question. Can this be done for high schoolers and middle schoolers as well? I presume yes, but why 1st through 5th graders, and why was it important for you to reach that age group?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, there's a few answers. One is we're becoming more and more convinced of the importance of catching kids earlier on, building, and it's a Bible education program. It's gospel centered, but it's also somewhat academic, meaning, we're teaching these biblical truths, teaching kids the Bible. We actually take kids through the entire Bible, Genesis to Revelation, in that 5-year cycle, pointing to the gospel every step along the way. So we just become convinced that putting in those foundational pieces, the earlier, the better. We have a middle school program. We anticipate having a high school program, even a dual enrollment partnership with a university program. But we want to start young, grow the program as the students get older. Then there's a logistical challenge that at the middle school and high school level, classes typically become daily classes that are like any other elective. And so what happens is that your enrollment is just going to be much lower, because students, they might enroll for a semester, but then they have to get other electives as well, right? So they have to get their choir or band or art or whatever. And so you're not going to have the same type of extensive participation once a week, every week for 5 years. It's just an incredible opportunity, an untapped opportunity. I'd say the greatest missed opportunity of the American church to reach the next generation. That's what we're trying to address. But to build into those kids at the elementary level, have a middle school program, have a high school program, but also link arms and partner with ministries like FCA, Youth for Christ, local youth groups, so that as we've invested in these students at the younger ages, they can then be passed off into the hands of those more teenage-oriented ministries.
I love it. Such great stuff. The website's lifewiseacademy.org, correct, Joel? Lifewiseacademy.org?
That's right. Lifewise, not your autocorrect might type in likewise, which we
Yes.
didn't realize at the beginning, but no, it's lifewiseacademy.org.
I love it. People can go check out more there and learn more about Joel's journey. All right, let's wind down here with, I think, just the lessons that God has been teaching you and speaking to you lately. It's a question we ask all of our guests as we wind down on our conversations here on Sports Spectrum. What is the Lord showing you? What is he teaching you right now, Joel?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's that I can't do. So it's a humbling humility, I would say, that I can't do everything.
Yeah.
Big ideas, big vision, big goals, but it's simply not possible under my own strength. Without his grace, I'll fall today. And without his power and his presence and him working, the goals we have, whether that be for the ministry, whether that be for my family, whether that be for anything, they're just not going to be accomplished. So leaning on him as well as leaning on others, I'm learning that daily.
Mm. He is Joel Penton. Again, he's got 2 books. I want to make sure we're clear on that. Stand Your Ground, which is out, as well as 7 Lies Almost Every Teen Believes. Both books available everywhere books are found. LifewiseAcademy.org is the website for the Lifewise Academy. He's got a great speaking ministry, Stand for Truth. You can check it all out online. And if you can't get a hold of Joel directly, come through me. I'll make sure I get to Joel to let him know that you guys are all interested in learning more. But this was great, man. Great to get to know you. Great to connect with you. I'm hoping that our paths will cross even more in the future. I just think what you're doing is awesome in trying to reach people for the gospel, especially young people, where I think it's most needed. So thanks for joining us, brother. All the best to you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. So appreciate you and the work you're doing. And I hope we can continue the conversation.
Many thanks to Joel Penton for joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. What a story he has. I mean, how about that idea for Lifewise Academy and reaching kids for the gospel in schools legally? I love it. It's amazing, and I hope this thing takes off. I really do. What a heart he has to help teens. Man, reaching those young people, those impressionable kids with the gospel, giving them the truth that they need to hear at that young age. Love the work he's doing. You can learn more. Again, his website is joelpenton.com, joelpenton.com. And then he's got the academy that he talked about, Lifewise Academy, and it's simply lifewiseacademy.org, lifewiseacademy.org. And again, Joel, the ministry he's doing, it teaches character education during the day and then at night or in these other areas where he can do these special events. He's preaching the gospel. And he's got the 2 books he talked about, Stand Your Ground, and then the second book, 7 Lies Almost Every Teen Believes. This is a great guy to talk to, by the way, if you want to have him come in and speak to you and your audience, especially students and impacting students. His website says more than 1,000 schools and 1 million students have been impacted by the words and the story that Joel Penton shares. So again, joelpenton.com is the website. LifewiseAcademy.org is the website specifically for the academy and bringing the gospel into the schools legally, which is pretty cool. And really appreciate Joel for joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. We also appreciate our sponsors today and partners with Sports Spectrum. Ronald Blue Trust. Having a trusted financial advisor can really provide confidence and reassurance for you as you try to figure out what to do with your finances. What's our financial future look like? Ronald Blue Trust is the place to turn to, applying biblical wisdom, technical expertise, helping their clients make wise financial decisions. Right now, we're all looking to experience clarity and confidence. We're all looking to leave a lasting legacy with our finances, be good stewards of our wealth. Ronald Blue Trust wants to help you through that process. You can learn more right now. Go to ronblue.com, ronblue.com. Thank you again for tuning in to today's episode of Sports Spectrum Podcast. One favor we want to ask of you, do us a favor, click that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode of our podcast. It just helps get the word out as well. When you click subscribe, you listen to the show, you tell others about what you heard here today, like with Joel Penton, and then they tune in, they tell others. And really, our goal is to get as many people as possible, not just to listen to the podcast, but to hear about Jesus Christ and the impact that he is making in the world of sports through the different guests that we have on here. And maybe somebody listens for the first time and hears about Jesus and makes that most important decision that they could make, maybe the most important decision they'll ever make, in saying yes to Christ. So thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time right here on Sports Spectrum. My name's Jason. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.